sermon that I preached was this text on this day, but a few years back. And I said to the congregation, 2 weeks ago, I looked down through a window into that house. And that was exciting. You can go there. If you've got a computer at home, give the question to Google or whoever your search engine is. And it will show you a picture that includes in a very small space the remnant of the public building not called the church, what's it called? Synagogue. It'll show you the outline of the synagogue, and then like 2 tiny little lots next to it. And then the next thing is Peter's house. And built over Peter's house is a whole big church. It's on giant pillars. And there's a huge square on the floor of the church. So tourists can come in and look down into the remnants of that house. And it's probably right. It probably is really, truly Peter's house. Because after Jesus, that became a center for Christianity for the whole area. And it has been reconstructed and expanded, and you can see the expansions where it took place. Well, it becomes very real. And you can see that from the entrance to the synagogue to the entrance to Peter's house is only about 10 giant steps. They were there. Probably late for church services. It's always the ones right across the street, right? And Mark is telling us a story just as briefly as he can. He had just last Sunday, I think it was, in that gospel reading, Jesus was one who taught with authority. But he doesn't bother to tell us why they thought that. He doesn't bother to tell us what Jesus was teaching, because he's trying to do this as briefly and with as few words as he can. These are summary statements. So when he tells us the story about Jesus walking along the beach and he chooses his first disciples, it almost sounds like something happens by magic. But it doesn't necessarily need to be so. He's just telling the story in a way that uses as few words as possible. Now, when I first read this, I thought, oh, they think women are for cooking. That's going to be trouble. She was sick in bed, and they went home, and those guys got her out of bed so she could serve them. I don't think so. You got to know my grandma Hauser, who we joked about as the neighborhood pusher. But what she pushed was food. You know, before she got a hold of me, I was skinny. Oh, David, you didn't eat. You hardly ate anything. You need some more. Yeah, Grandma. Shovel it to me. And every time you walked in the house, it was you had to eat. And she wouldn't take no for an answer. And I think that's probably the way it was with Peter's mother-in-law. And I think she knew Jesus very well. Every time he came to town, that's where he stayed. I think he was part of the family and probably considered her like his mom. So this is a family thing going on, I think. And when I see that she had a fever, that's not to be taken lightly in those days. We think nothing of it and take some medicine. But they didn't have those medicines then. And so having a fever was something very serious. I'm just trying to help you understand the words that you heard Mark tell this story. And I think Mark, the gospel writer, is well aware of the problem that pops up when he says the whole town turned out to get healed by Jesus. Peter's liking that. Man, we're all going to be famous. He's going to heal the whole town. But that's part of Peter misunderstanding what the Messiah was going to be about. But Jesus teaches him little by little so Peter understands. You know, we're not here to heal everybody. That's not my main job. My main job is to proclaim the good news, to tell people about my Father. And so Jesus gets up very early, when it was still dark, kind of like the ticket I got this morning when I was coming here. Out there in the middle of nowhere, and I missed a sign, and I saw flash, flash. Knew immediately I had gotten caught. So Jesus says, no, we're not going to go with the crowd. We're not going to go back into the house and the town and heal people. But I need to move on to other little towns, to other places, and tell them the good news that I am here as their intercessor to be a preacher. Jesus kept his eye on the ball. Peter gets mixed up. Isn't it strange that all the demons know exactly who Jesus is and none of the disciples do? That seems backwards to me. But Mark is making a point. The disciples couldn't get it, not until they had experienced the suffering and death and resurrection of Jesus. Now you can know who Jesus really is. Now you can get it. Now you see the whole picture. So here we are trying to be disciples of Jesus. And to be like Jesus is probably, it becomes our business to proclaim the good news. And being here on a regular basis helps us do that. It's easy to get off message. It's easy to go with good words or nice words instead of the good news words. And a good way to keep track of that, a good rule for you to use, if it's about you doing, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you should do this, you should do that, that's law. Good news, gospel, is what God has done for you. And people kid me about it, but I always turn to baptism, because then I'm on message. Then it's about what God has done for me, what God has done for you. In baptism, he claims you as his own. He makes you his own. And he promises nothing will ever get between me and you. I will be with you always. That's my promise, and it's true. Amen.
Please rise. We confess our common faith by reciting the Apostles' Creed, found on the bottom of page 8 of your worship bulletin.